Hi everyone, this is Roy Neowin, and today we have here the Samsung Galaxy S21 5G. So this is a pretty exciting phone for a couple of reasons for me. One of them is the fact that I'm getting this pretty close to its release date. I think it's the closest I've gotten a phone from Samsung so close to the release date of the phone. And that's pretty cool. But there's a couple more reasons for that I want to get into later. So right now, let's just take off this lid so I don't have to blur out those barcodes anymore. And the phone is here right away. I'll talk about it more in a little bit. I just want to talk about the box first because this is much thinner than previous Samsung phone boxes, at least the Galaxy S20 FE that I reviewed a couple months ago. And that's because the phone doesn't come with a charger anymore. So if you open this up, there's a charging cable, which is USB Type-C to Type-C, and the manual's there, but that's it. There's nothing else in the box. And I actually think that's a good thing, because now this is about half the thickness of the box for the S20 FE. And that means if you're, say, shipping 1 million phones, just to start off, and each truck or whatever you're using to transport them can carry 2,000 of the old boxes. That means it can now carry 4,000 of these, where you will need 500 trucks to ship those 1 million phones. Now you only need 250 of those trucks on the road shipping the same number of phones. So I know a lot of people don't really buy the environmental friendliness excuse of not having a charger anymore, but I think it makes sense. This is very surface level analysis, but I think it makes sense from that perspective. And also you're just making fewer chargers now, so that's fewer resources and less energy being used to make those chargers. And at the same time, I think most people will now have chargers at home that are USB Type-C, or if you're buying an iPhone, you probably already have a Lightning charger too. So I don't think the inconvenience that comes from that is that big, and I think this is probably a good step, even though I know a lot of people are upset at that. But moving away from that, here is the phone itself, and Samsung sent me the Phantom White version. So I'm just gonna peel off these things. The front and the back. And it even has one little thing on the camera module there. So this is the Phantom White, and it's pretty darn nice looking. Oh, it's still got something on the sides, okay. I think this looks really nice. It's a matte finish, and it's plastic, which is interesting for a flagship phone, but this is made of plastic. But it's pretty solid feeling plastic. I think it feels a little sturdier than the Galaxy S20 FE. And it's got a really nice feel to the touch. I really do like matte finish phones more than glossy finish phones these days. And I love the design they went with here. I know that for a lot of people it doesn't really matter much, but the camera bump, the way it's designed to mount into the frame here, I just think this is so clever and it looks so good when you look at it all around. This is probably one of the coolest design decisions Samsung has made with their phones lately. I just think the camera bump looks so much nicer this way. I really do love the way the camera bump looks here. I wish I got the purple phone with the golden frame. I think that contrast is absolutely gorgeous. But this looks really classy too, and it's just really nice to look at. And before we get into the specs specifically, I want to talk about why this is plastic and why I think that's a good thing. Here's the thing. For the past few years, we've been looking at smartphone prices go up and up every time. and especially with flagship phones. And then last year we saw the Galaxy S20 start at $999, and then you had the S20 Plus, which was $1199, and the S20 Ultra was $1399. So those were extremely expensive phones. And then Samsung came out towards the end of the year, and they made this phone, the Galaxy S20 FE, which started at $699, and it still gave you a Snapdragon 865. You got 6 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage. The main camera was the same as on the Galaxy S20, but the others were downgraded. And of course, it was made of plastic instead of glass. But it started at $699, and you'd still get that top-tier processor, quite a bit of RAM, not as much, but 6 gigabytes is still pretty decent. Plenty of storage, a 120Hz display, a solid main camera. This was my favorite Samsung phone at the time. And I don't know if I said it in my review specifically, but I know I said it in conversations with friends, but I hope that Samsung would learn from this, that this would sell well and Samsung would learn. And they did. They really did. I think they learned all the right lessons here. So now the S21 starts at $799. That's just $100 more than the S20 FE and $200 less than the S20 last year. And for a flagship, that's really good pricing now. And of course, they made similar sacrifices, specifically in the build. So plastic back, there's no charger anymore, so that's a sacrifice you're making. And the display is still 120Hz, but it's only Full HD now. So it used to be Quad HD. That's a downgrade that the S20 FE made, and now they brought it over to the S21. That might upset some people, but again, I still think this is a super smart decision. So since 2015 or so, when Quad HD display started being the norm, I've always said you don't need that much resolution in a smartphone display. And I stand by that all these years later. So cutting back to Full HD and keeping the higher refresh rate, that's an extremely smart decision, and that makes this phone still incredible value. So now you have this flagship with a Snapdragon 888, or if you're in Europe like I am, the Exynos 2100, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage, 5G support, 120Hz refresh rate, and a pretty solid camera setup that I'll get into in a bit. For $799, or whatever the Portuguese pricing is, probably $829 or so, I actually don't remember. But in America, it's $799. And I think that's such a great proposition just to start with. So I think Samsung really did learn all the right lessons with this phone. But anyways, let's get into the specs here. So the camera setup is still a 12 megapixel main camera, just like last year and the Galaxy S20 FE. But here you have another 12 megapixel camera for the wide angle, and then a 64 megapixel camera for the telephoto. So those are better than on the S20 FE, at least the telephoto is. So you have a camera setup here that should be pretty solid. I'm not sure because I haven't used it yet, but it should be fairly solid. I'm not a huge fan of Samsung cameras, but I actually didn't think the S20 FEs was too bad considering the price and everything else that was on the table. So hopefully that'll stay true here, and maybe it'll be even a little better. And then on the front you have a 10 megapixel selfie camera, while the S20 FE I believe had 32 megapixels. So the resolution is much higher on the S20 FE, but you can tell that it's not as good. I actually already turned this on for a bit and had them side by side with the selfie camera turned on, and it was a huge difference. This was so much better. Yeah, so in terms of the specs, that's mostly it. This one does have a 4000 mAh battery. It's the same as the S20 had last year, and slightly smaller. Well, a bit smaller than the S20 FE, which had a 4500 milliamp hour battery. But this is also a smaller screen and a smaller phone in general. So we're just gonna go ahead and turn it on. So now the phone's turned on. Just to quickly go around the phone here, it's nothing unexpected, but you do have the power button / Bixby button, which is still here, volume rocker, 2 microphones at the top here, lots of antenna bands all around, of course. 5G does require that. And at the bottom, USB Type-C, SIM card tray, which does not include expandable storage, so only SIM cards, and a bottom firing speaker there. So in terms of design, that's it. You can see at the top here how the camera bump is protruding a little bit from the bezel, from the frame. But we're just going to go ahead and set this up. So now we've set up the phone. It's showing me a bunch of stuff. So the setup process is pretty much the same as it used to be. So nothing has changed there. But there are some differences when you compare this to the S20 FE. Actually, putting them side by side, just the display itself is already different. Obviously, the screen is bigger on the S20 FE a little bit, but the bezels are also bigger. So if you look at the bezels, I mean, the background on this one makes it a little harder to see the bezels. So let's try to change it to something else. Like that. Oh, this is a video. I don't know. I don't really want a video. I don't know how to do this. Okay, there we go. Lock and home screen. Let's just do it for both. So if you put them side by side, you can see now the bezels are significantly smaller on the S21 compared to the S20 FE. And another difference you'll notice in the software actually is that the S20 FE would use the Samsung's Messages app as the default. You see it right there. But the S21 is actually going with Google Messages, and if you open it, you know, it's everything Google, but weirdly enough, it seems to have been customized to look more like Samsung's design language. Like the color of the bubble here seems more Samsung than Google, but it's just using Google's service now, so you can use things like Messages for Web and stuff like that. So I think that's an interesting decision. You still do get Samsung Messages if you want to. It's hidden there. But it's not the default anymore, which is really interesting. And before, you didn't even get Google Messages at all pre-installed. So I think this is good. I prefer when companies use the default apps from Google for the most part. So this is a good improvement in my opinion. And also if you swipe to the side now, where your Samsung Daily used to be, now you have the Google feed. I don't care for it either. I don't care for either one, but if I'm going to use any one of them, it's probably Google's. So again, that is an improvement. And really in terms of the software, that's the biggest difference. There's some slight design tweaks here with the devices and media buttons now being visible right away. On the S20 FE, you have to swipe down to have them at the top, which also happens here, but now they're more readily accessible there. This might be just my eyes, but I also think the colors are a little cooler on the S21. This one has more of a yellowish tone to the colors, and I prefer this one a bit. But that is just a quick comparison there. Aside from that, pretty much the same. All the apps look pretty much the same. Even the camera app looks pretty much the same. So no big changes there. The settings app, I believe, also very similar. I don't like the light theme, I should say. But aside from that, no big deal. How do you even turn on dark? Oh, it's at the top. Okay. So there's dark mode. Again, pretty similar to what it was before. terms of the software experience, it's gonna be all very similar, aside from that Google Messages app thing that I think is a good change. So everything else is similar. This is running Android 11. The S20 FE I was showing you was also updated to Android 11 already, so fairly similar software there. It's all very familiar. We have the gallery, looks same as before. Could move to OneDrive, but I don't really care right now. You get all the same Samsung apps pre-installed. You do have, like I said, Samsung Messages here that used to be on the home screen. All the same Google apps. And now you have this Samsung Free app, which is new. I'm not sure why this is here, but it seems to be just a news app. I don't know why this exists. I guess because they removed Samsung Daily from the home screen, they just made an app for it, so you can read the news that would be there. I don't really care about this, but whatever. Everything else is the same. Game launchers here, all the Samsung apps are here. It's all pretty standard business. So I think this is a pretty cool phone. Because of that price point, it's $200 less than last year. They made the right sacrifices, just like they made with the S20 FE. They made the sacrifices that they needed to make. They used plastic instead of glass. And there's no charger now, of course. And they reduced the resolution of the screen, but not the refresh rate. And those are the right sacrifices to make. And now you have a flagship that starts at $799 instead. And in this case, you actually have 8 gigabytes of RAM instead of the 6 of the S20 FE. So the performance on this should be just fine. And it's just exciting. I think it's good that flagships are getting cheaper this year, because it just is. Now more people can afford to have a premium experience from Samsung. So I think that's very good. But, maybe that's just me. Probably not, though. I'll be, of course, reviewing this for the next couple of weeks, and I'm very excited to do so. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.